From ancient cemeteries encircled in urban jungles surrounded by tales of chilling supernatural phenomena, to national military burying grounds where it's rumored the spirits of fallen soldiers still roam. Are you ready for our third list of picks for some of the most haunted graveyards in the United States? Number 5. Greenwood Cemetery. Greenwood Cemetery, located in the Brooklyn borough of New York City, New York, is a 478-acre burying grounds that, upon its completion, became so popular, it inspired competition in Central Park in Manhattan, as well as in the nearby Prospect Park. Historically, the yard was founded as a rural cemetery circa 1838 and has been titled as Brooklyn's first public park. Through the 1840s, a handful of churches purchased plots in Greenwood. In the 1850s, more serious landscaping of the site commenced, and by the 1860s, the cemetery was drawing in tourist crowds second only to Niagara Falls. Greenwood would undergo a number of expansions up through the 1880s, as well as a range of remodels, renovations, and improvements through the early 20th century. And in 1961, construction of a new crematorium was started. Greenwood remains open to this day, boasting around 600,000 interments, an impressive open-air venue, art gallery, arboretum, and, if associated claims hold any water, its fair share of hauntings, with officials and visitors reporting orbs and mists in photography, disembodied voices, electronic malfunctions, and the sensations of being watched, followed, or even touched by a presence unseen. Several have described encounters with shadowy figures or apparitions ranging from Revolutionary War soldiers to more modern manifestations, and the sounds of ghostly gunfire and phantom horses are commonly heard. Lastly, on August 27th of 1776, on Battle Hill, the Battle of Brooklyn, or the Battle of Long Island, which was the first major battle following the Declaration of Independence, and the largest battle of the Revolutionary War, was fought out, resulting in a British victory, with Americans suffering around 2,200 casualties, and the British and Hessians only 400. Near the hill, many have described the disembodied clash of battle, often accompanied by supernatural visions of the carnage. Number 4. Fort Smith National Cemetery. Fort Smith National Cemetery, located at Garland Avenue and 6th Street in Fort Smith, Arkansas, is an honored military burying ground spread over 22.3 beautifully serene acres. Historically, Fort Smith was established in 1817 as a frontier fort, with the cemetery plotted around the same time. But in 1824, following waves of disease and massive loss of life, the post was eventually closed down. In 1838, a new fort was constructed on site alongside an expansion of the original cemetery, and in 1861, at the start of the Civil War, the post was left abandoned entirely and was later utilized by the Confederacy. During this period, it's estimated that around 400 soldiers were buried in the graveyard. The fort was reclaimed by Union forces on September 1st of 1863, after which, in 1867, the old graveyard was transformed into a national cemetery and began accepting reinterments of associated soldiers who were buried hastily or improperly. Today, Fort Smith National Cemetery boasts more than 13,000 interments, 1,400 unmarked graves, retains space for future burials, and, according to legend, houses a range of hauntings, with staff and visitors reporting disembodied voices heard singing old hymns, eerie lights spied hovering over graves, the clatter of phantom wagon wheels, and encounters with a ghostly funeral procession, with a crowd of people dressed in turn-of-the-century century clothing surrounding a hearse. Also reported through the yard are sightings of a spectral horse led by a ghostly soldier who's been known to nod and take notice of the living. One final legend tells of Judge Isaac C. Parker, otherwise known as the Hanging Judge, who throughout his career sentenced 160 individuals to their deaths, 79 of which met the gallows. His actions in life garnered him a dark reputation, and upon his passing, in 1896, he was laid to rest at Fort Smith. His apparition has been sighted at night, always seemingly attempting to communicate with the living, but silently grasping at his throat as if his voice was stripped of him in death. Number 3. Oak Hill Cemetery. Oak Hill Cemetery, located off South Avenue in Battle Creek, Michigan, is a 55-acre historic cemetery recognized for holding the remains of several notable names, including abolitionist Sojourner Truth and co-founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Ellen and James White. Historically, the community of Battle Creek was plotted in 1836 with land for a small burying ground set aside. By 1843, however, this first graveyard was in danger of overcrowding, spurring planning of a new cemetery. And a year later, on March 25th of 1844, Oak Hill was established. This new final resting place would accept its first interment on May 21st of the same year, in the form of one Esther Cox. Over time, those buried in the town's earlier cemetery were reinterred at this new memorial expanse, and from 1899 to 1900, Oak Hill would also accept reinterments from the Society of Friends Quaker burial grounds. Oak Hill remains open to the public from 8 a.m. until dusk, is admission-free, and has grown wildly in popularity regarding one chilling ghost story. Above the grave of businessman Johannes Decker sits the statue of a woman, which, as local legend has it, contains the spirit of a mother who, long ago, murdered her children before killing herself. Many who have passed by this statue have reported sighting tears streaking from its eyes, earning it the nickname Crying Mary. This fable has been heavily debated by historians who point out that Johannes and his wife Ruth had 2 children, a 3-year-old daughter that died to scarlet fever in 1872, and a baby they'd welcome in 1875 but who would also die before ever even receiving a name. Johannes would pass on in 1910, and in 1911 Ruth actually had the statue commissioned as a memorial to their family. Ruth would join them in death in 1925, leading some others to speculate that the spirit within may actually belong to her, weeping over the loss she experienced in life. Also reported throughout the yard are extreme cold spots, orbs visible to the naked eye, and the disembodied sounds of a woman sobbing. Number 2. Church Street Graveyard. Church Street Graveyard, located in downtown Mobile, Alabama, is a historic cemetery recognized for being the city's oldest burying grounds. Historically, the yard was founded in 1819 on land owned by one William E. Kennedy. Sadly, while purchase negotiations were still underway, the region was swept in yellow fever, resulting in the deaths of 274 locally, and prompting an immediate sale. Official purchase of the grounds took place in 1820. In 1830, the cemetery's prominent wall was added in, and over time, the expanse was split into 3 sections, a first for Catholic burials, a second for Protestant, and a third for everyone else. The 1897 yellow fever epidemic would fill Church Street to capacity, and a year later, in 1898, it was closed to further interments. Today, the city of Mobile has grown to encompass this humble cemetery, which boasts around 1,000 total interments, and a number of local legends concerning the small yard's supposed supernatural activity have formed, with both staff and visitors reporting the constant feeling of being watched or followed, shadowy figures that are sighted darting about, and encounters with full-bodied apparitions in clothing spanning the ages. One more popular story surrounding Church Street tells of the Boyington oak tree located just outside of the cemetery's wall. It's said that in 1834, Charles R.S. Boyington was witnessed walking towards the graveyard with one Nathaniel Frost. That later the same day, Mr. Frost was discovered deceased within the yard, and that eventually Mr. Boyington was accused and later executed for his murder. Due to the fact that he was a killer, his body was set to be laid to rest in a potter's field just off cemetery grounds, and it's said that before his execution, Boyington proclaimed that an oak would grow from his heart to prove his innocence. The Boyington oak tree is said to be a result of this proclamation, and near it, many have reported disembodied whispers, moaning, and even sobbing. Some claim these are the cries of poor Charles forever attempting to prove his innocence. Also reported at Church Street are EVPs of a woman screaming, "I hate you," as well as encounters with what's assumed to be her spectral form that's been known to chase lone explorers from the property in a rage. Number 1. Hollywood Cemetery. Hollywood Cemetery, deriving its name from the numerous holly trees spread over its grounds, and located off the banks of the James River in the Oregon Hill neighborhood of Richmond, Virginia, is a 135-acre historic cemetery that's recognized as one of the most renowned and aesthetically pleasing burying grounds in the whole of the country. Historically, land holding Hollywood was initially owned by one William Byrd III, and later by the Harvey family, during which time it was known as Harvey's Woods. The graveyard itself was established in 1847 and was designed as a rural garden, and in 1849 it was officially dedicated. Through the Civil War, remains of over 18,000 Confederate soldiers were interred on site. In 1869, a 90-foot pyramid was erected to honor them, and by 1919 the cemetery had grown into a well-loved tourist attraction, with its owners offering out guided tours of its grounds. In 1992, the Palmer Chapel Mausoleum was constructed, adding 730 crypts for caskets and 160 cremation niches. And in 2011, the President's Circle underwent large-scale renovations, welcoming in 1,800 new burial plots and a granite walkway. Hollywood Cemetery remains open to this day, offering lots, crypts, and cremation niches, alongside an impressive arboretum and tree growth that predates the graveyard itself. Over the years, witness accounts of inexplicable phenomena and a mountain of chilling fables surrounding Hollywood's many hauntings have been perpetuated by locals, groundskeepers, and tourists alike, with those frequenting its expanse reporting disembodied whispers and music, the constant feeling of being watched or followed by something unseen, shadowy figures sighted slinking about, and apparitions in clothing spanning the centuries, many clad in old military garb. In addition to the bodies of U.S. Presidents James Monroe and John Tyler, the grounds also hold the remains of Confederate State President Jefferson Davis, along with 28 Confederate generals and thousands of Confederate soldiers, and respective apparitions have been encountered wandering the area. Near the Pyramid Monument, usually around dusk, some have described unearthly howls and moans emanating from thin air, and inexplicably cold spots near its corners. One more popular legend surrounding Hollywood tells of the Richmond vampire, which is said to reside within the mausoleum of W. W. Poole, dated at 1913. This story, which began circulating through the 1960s and which was actually mentioned in the Virginia Commonwealth University's paper in '76, tells that on October 2nd of 1925, during the collapse of the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad's Churchill Tunnel, under the Churchill neighborhood, several workers were buried alive. It's said that either the tunneling or the collapse awakened an ancient evil, that a monster emerged and was spotted briefly by rescue crews, and that it escaped and was likely taking refuge inside the old tomb. Sadly, it's now believed this monster may have been 28-year-old railroad fireman Benjamin F. Mosby, who was burned beyond recognition during relief efforts, stumbled around incoherently for a time, and later passed away at Grace Hospital, after which he was laid to rest right at Hollywood. This heart-wrenching reality hasn't stopped claims, however, of encounters with a bloodthirsty thing that stalks the grounds after dark, and that gives chase to any who cross its path. One final tale tells of a young local girl who died of scarlet fever in 1862, and whose grave is easily recognizable for its cast-iron statue of a Newfoundland. Many nearing this marker have reported spying the statue's head turning to follow them, or of sighting the apparition of the little girl playing with her dog, usually late at night and right near her plot. Taking its dark and fascinating history into consideration, and coupling it with an unbelievable range of purported paranormal activity and urban legends, we felt Hollywood Cemetery was the perfect final selection as the most haunted graveyard in the United States. Thanks for tuning in for our third list of picks for some of the most haunted graveyards in the United States. If you enjoyed hearing our histories and ghost stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn notifications on. Throw us a like, and most importantly, share us with anyone you feel deserves a good scare. We'll catch you all next time.